or you're 3 and 4-ish. And again, shocking, Grandpa took a shine to her. And apparently, throughout the day, I just got more and more upset. Again, shocking. And at the end of the day, I said something to the effect of, "He's my grandpa, get your own," basically. And the reason I wanted to share this is because I think of him as being a very willing grandfather and father to anybody he came across, especially children.
Yep.
And the quote I thought of is actually, again, shocking Star Wars quote from me. It's from Yoda. And the quote is, "We are what they grow beyond." And I think that with the size of this family and how close it is, I think that's something that he would really find important.
I guess for the next poem. Well, many of you know that I've had lots of adventures in life, and I've had lots of twists and turns, and made lots of choices that Dad didn't always agree with.
Good for you, not for him.
And there were those times where I would say, "Dad, guess what?" And I would tell him, "Is this going to be good for you, bad for me?" I'll never forget that. I mean, that happened many times. But the thing about Dad is that, you know, he always got on board, even if he didn't agree with my choice. And he always had my back. And when I was leaving, on one of my adventures, I think it was when I was leaving to move to New Jersey, to marry the guy that turned out to not be a very good man.
Which one?
But, which one? Thank you.
New Jersey. Oh, he wasn't even sure of his name either, so.
Yeah, so, he said to me when I was leaving, he said, "Don't forget, you can always come back." So I think the thing about Dad is that we always had a soft place to land. No matter what life threw our way, we always had a soft place to land and people who loved us unconditionally.
Yep.
You're up, big guy.
Yeah. I'm Stacy. So Bob, my first encounter with Nick was pulling up on a Harley in black leather, taking his daughter away.
I'm lucky to live through it.
It had Susan's friends down the neighborhood. They were all calling each other. "Is that Susan? Was that Susan?"
That can't be
They
Susan.
can't be Susan. One thing that I'll always appreciate about Nick so he welcomed my
Monica?
Well, I kind of had thought about some things, but what Mitch said and what Greg said kind of reminded me of two other things about Dad with children. And we were having a birthday party for Grace when she was, maybe it was your first birthday party, and your cousins who were twins were about 18 months old, and we had seen this and we were assured that, oh, they never go to anybody but their mother. And I thought, we'll see. And so Dad sat on the floor, and no kidding, 5 minutes later they were crawling all over him. And they just loved him, and I thought, yep, that's about right. And I also was thinking about, because Bob had mentioned it and Greg had mentioned it, so the first time that Dad met Kerwin, of course, we were quite young. Mom can appreciate this. And so, of course, there was a great deal of skepticism about that. But when we got engaged, you know, I was telling Dad, you know, he's my best friend. And he said, well, that's fine, but I want to make sure he's going to be your best husband.
So far.
It's a low bar, right? Well, only had one to compare. But I just, for some reason, I had forgotten that, and I just remembered that, like, you know, that he just was very concerned about that. But I didn't really think of Dad in terms of, like, being safe. But I had three things that kind of came to mind. Was that when we were in D.C. once, I mean, this is before the kids were born, we were at the Metro, and we were standing on the platform, and this man approached me and said, do I know you from somewhere? And I didn't recognize him, and I said, oh, I don't think so. And he kind of got a little, like, assertive, like, kind of a little too close, and he kind of took my arm, and he said, no, I know you from somewhere. And Dad just got in between us and said, get back, she doesn't know you. And he said, well, I'm just talking to her. He said, you touched her, now get back. And he just was really like, you know, and this man was bigger than he was, but he was like, no. And another, so again, the safe thing, we were going to see fireworks when I was pregnant with Grace. We were walking over a kind of a field, and he just immediately came up and took my arm and said, you're carrying my grandchild. You know, I'm gonna walk with you to make sure that you're safe. And then Grace was terrified of loud noises when she was little, and I mean would create the biggest fuss. Surprise! And when even a mildly loud noise was around, and it was really kind of frustrating. And we were at the playground and I was with Lily, and Dad was with Grace, and the one near the railroad tracks. And this train started coming. I thought, oh my gosh, we are in for it. She's going to have a hysterical fit. And she didn't cry at all. And Dad took her right up to the gate. And I said later, Gracie, honey, weren't you scared of the train? And she said, well, a little bit. I was with my grandpa, so I knew I was safe. So that's what I thought of. So yeah.
Want me to go next?
Yeah,
Okay,
sure.
sorry, not yet. So, as a son-in-law, I can assure you, Bob, that we all felt that way.
It wasn't me then.
There was,
No, it was Nick. Yeah, he followed that theme.
that's right. It's you know, who are you until you prove that you belong to be there, right? But once you're in, and you're fully trusted. And it's very much so with Nick. As a matter of fact, I was thinking about different things to share, and one of the ones that popped in my head, as Carla pointed out, we obviously met very, very young in college, and Carla slipped me some of the answers for the first test. She's like, "When you meet my father, well, when you meet anybody really, but especially for my father, right? You make eye contact, firm handshake." Right? So one of the early lessons that I had from Nick via Carla. Another totally different thought about Nick was. Another lesson I guess to be learned was don't be too busy to give time to the people who need it. Right? And there were plenty of stories today, and we all know stories of times where he just did the right thing. Right? I have a feeling that no one in this room knows all the times that he's done that because it was just the thing to do. I mean, I know he traveled a lot for work and in the community, and I'm sure he bought coffee or whatever for people that, again, So hopefully everyone, continues to try to do that here. And just one last thing, I guess, play off of Donna's sermon today was, don't wait to die to start to live forever.
Mhm. Mm. Mm.
Paper, scissors? Here, what do you got? Go ahead. She hates going first even to order.
Yeah, she's like so tense.
Lily, you go. She's fine.
Alright. So it's difficult for me to think of like a memory that I have or a lesson that he taught me because, I mean, I think the giver-grandchild experience was kind of all over. We all experienced the train set and the endless stream of desserts and the porch and playing in the yard. And of course all the adults were there for this, so you know it too. But I think one of the biggest things that Grandpa gave me that didn't necessarily go to all of you was our lack of filter. Our tendency to just a thought and then it comes out of our mouth and there's nothing between to stop it.
Good luck with the calls.
We're not talking about that right now. Yeah, so that's something that we've enjoyed, especially as he neared the end of his life, and his whatever filter he did have sort of started to break down a little bit, and he would be more savage than usual. So we connected over that. And I've had a lot of unhappiness in my adult life. And I know you're all thinking, like, she's been an adult for like 2 minutes, how much unhappiness can there be? You'd be surprised. And, I always thought that was punishment for something that I didn't do. But when I started thinking about, like, what a happy childhood I had, I started thinking that maybe that's just kind of balancing it out, because I think that probably I had the happiest childhood that any child could have, and a big part of that was Grandma and Grandpa.
Amen to that.
What?
Amen to that.
Oh, yeah. That was a very big part of my happy memories from childhood, is going to that house in 230 Orchard Lane, and I remember throwing fits when we had to leave and refusing to get in the car because I just wanted to stay with Grandma and Grandpa. And I have a lot of happy memories in that house.
I did the same thing with Susan.
That's what I have to say.
Sure. Well, I, again, thought a lot about it, and, there was when Grandma and Grandpa came, and I needed Grandpa's seal of approval on my apartment in Charlottesville, and he gave it. We walked around, it's like, it's well lit at night, that's good. The gate is nice and safe, that's good. And he's like looking at all the neighbors, like, okay, they look good. He checked everything out. We had that really good French restaurant that I accidentally picked, and it was a little expensive, and I felt bad. And of course, they were like, "Don't worry about it." And I thought of how when I took him around to Carter Rock, and I walked into that tour as an engineering apprentice, and I left it as the director of the engineering. He told everybody, my granddaughter practically runs that thing. You know what? I practically do. But I keep thinking about, I don't know if this is even real or if it's just the memory's been warped over time, but I think that the earliest memory I have of anything is with Grandpa, and I just remember him, like, just walking down the street with him, and it was at night, and we saw this big full moon, and I think it was one of our Sandman walks, and
Yes, probably.
I just remember holding his hand, or maybe he was holding me in his arms, and this big full moon, and we were just watching it together, and I think that's the first memory I have of anything. And
Oh, great first memory.
yeah, it's appropriate that it's with him.
Hmm.
Grandpa's memory is falling out of a tree, so you win on that.
He's falling out of a tree. Was that his fault?
Yes.
Yeah.
Who do you think it was?
It's Grandpa and me, so it's gotta be the trains, right? It's like the coolest basement anyone could ever have. It's just filled with trains, and this, of course, is my favorite part of visiting, is getting to see the trains with Grandpa. But like what I appreciate now is that like no matter what he was doing, whenever I like wanted to be taken down to see the trains, he would grab my hand and lead me down, put them on in the order that they had to be in. Apparently, ask me what it is. I don't remember. But I also still have photos in my room of my favorite bridge here. Like, who has a favorite bridge? But he went out and took pictures of this bridge just for me because as a whatever child, I don't know how old I was,
You
I
were
decided,
2.
as a 2-year-old, I decided that that was my favorite bridge. So he went out and like, took pictures of it for me and gave them to me, and I still have them. So he always had time, even when it was just like, certainly not convenient. But he always had time for us.
There's also a question about the police while taking those pictures.
Yes, because it was right after September 11th.
Oh my God.
And they were like, sir, why are you taking pictures of this bridge?
Imagine having to explain to the police,
Yes,
like,
well,
this is my
This
grandchild's
is my
favorite bridge.
granddaughter. Great.
I'll go. So I've been thinking a lot, being back here again in Swickley, just, I don't know, I'd sort of forgotten after living here for 2 years that this had always been a place where, like, it was a holiday feeling, like coming home and always having to like make the trip, which was always a lot of fun. But then getting here and just feeling like it was a celebration, and even having the memory of going with Aunt Susan to the Eaton Park. But just always that feeling of it being special, and being special because we were all there, and how much Grandpa was a part of that. And just the care that he took in all that we're saying, right? The care that he took with each one of us. I was remembering the flower beds the other day.
Roses for Rebecca.
Roses for Rebecca. And the horses, the horse farm and the trains. Got my own little branch. So just a lot of those memories of feeling like this place is so special, and it's special because we were all there, and we were all there because he made sure we were all there.
Yeah.
You know if you weren't.
Yeah, I'm so glad that. Yeah, in my room in Boston, I have a wall of pictures hung up with all the different little families, and one I have is Gigi and Grandpa at Worcester as I'm graduating. So I'm just so glad that he could be there. Yeah. Sister.
All horses wouldn't have kept him away.
I was lucky enough, all 4 years of high school, with Gigi and Grandpa right next door. And a lot of days walking over there, just checking in, and it was always so nice. Grandma and Grandpa always so interested in what I had going on. what's going on with sports. And I remember as we kept going on, I was just so happy that we were able to be back close enough so we could see Grandpa and all the things that we've gotten to do, helping move furniture and I was always happy to do those things because I know that you and Grandpa both appreciate it. And the one thing, the image I'll never forget, it was one of the 2 o'clock mornings where Mom and I drove down and Grandpa was just on the floor, couldn't get up. And I had to pick him up and I was just holding him under the armpits. And it had been a while, we were just getting down there. And I remember Grandma hugging Grandpa while I was holding him up. And she was just so happy that he was back up. And that we were there to help him get back so he could sit down. And that's just the image that always stuck with me. And how close I was able to get the 2 of you, and how close you two always were with each other. And just getting to see that experience, it was just really important to me over the years. Yeah, Grandpa definitely meant a lot to me. Just thinking about him so much as he was trying to get through.
Just as an aside, Christian, wasn't too long ago, maybe a week, so we looked at the pictures on the wall a lot. And he said, you know, we don't have a picture of Christian when he hit that grand slam. We need a picture of that grand slam up there.
I'm just so glad he was there for that.
So Bob, we all had to go through what you went through.
It was a theme.
I thought it was me. And the reason we all had to go through it is because certainly the one theme that we can all relate to is his love. His love in so many different ways. And it was clearly evident to me the love of his daughters. When we sat at the dining room table and Donna, who, like all the other givers who set goals and aspirations for their lives, and the rest of us are so privileged to live along beside them as they reach for them. And she decided that it was time to go to seminary. She had served enough and realized that the majority of her time was outside of GSA and the federal government in a daily job that paid well, and that she was going to go and become a pastor. And so we were married, and she decided that it was time to tell Mary Lou and Nick this. And I can still see us sitting at the table at 2230 Orchard Lane, and Donna saying, well, I'm going to go to seminary. And Nick, who was very supportive, then said, what if Brian dies? And I think it's only fitting as we sit here celebrating his life and death that he asked that. Because it was clearly evident that he really cared more about her than anybody else. And he was such a force. And even in that, as Christian said, we certainly had a different exposure to him over the last many months. And yet his love for all of us was still so evident as he held on to the moments of dignity and allowed us into
Some pretty undignified times.
So just really private moments. Yeah, but we were able to serve him as he had served so many people. And it's without hesitation to do that. And even to know that we'll continue to do that for Mary Lou. She is also an amazing force of love and compassion and caring that we witnessed. Now, I've already started to share the Ralph Waldo Emerson quote that you posted on the board as a testament to him. And as Donna said, we all leave here obligated to continue to live the life that he has pointed us towards. And my certain and sure hope is that we continue to gather and think about those opportunities that we have to do that. And that is how we can bless his memory in those moments.
Well, you've already heard a lot from me today, but just wanted to share a couple of private experiences from my dad. The first one is to think about him always being there. So when I was a teenager, I had a crush on the pop star Rick Springfield. And I wanted to go see him so badly in concert. And so Dad said, no, we couldn't get tickets. They were too expensive. And I'll never forget when I opened up my birthday gift and there were 2 tickets to see Rick Springfield. And he said I could take anybody I wanted to the concert. And I picked him. So he went with me. And he stood over against holding up the wall while I was dancing on my seat. But he was there with me. And just the things that he would do for us, which were unbelievable. And then from there all the way to my graduation from Vanderbilt, when I know my dad was bursting his buttons with pride. But he was sick, and it was really hard for him to get around the campus. But just like showing up early for the Westminster graduation, there was nothing that was going to keep him away. And he rallied through it, and he was there to see me. And like Tina said, just you could feel the pride always that Dad felt for us. And that gave us the wind beneath our wings to soar, I think. And then the last one is something that really surprised me, being there not just for us but for others, as I alluded to in my talk today. But when I was in Washington, D.C., after my government hours, I volunteered at a local Presbyterian church because they had a tutoring program for inner city kids. And so I would go and tutor, and there was a young woman that I was matched with one-on-one. Her name was Alicia. And so I tutored her, and she was a high school student, and she had big dreams. She wanted to kind of get out of her really awful home, with cockroaches and no dad, and mom that had, lots of kids, and she was determined to do it differently. And so I encouraged her and kind of channeled some of Nick Giver, set goals, and then just as I was ready to leave there and go to Princeton, she told me she was pregnant. And I was disappointed for her, but I encouraged her, you can still do this. And so I went on with my life, and it was years later when I was visiting Dad, and he pulled out a letter from Alicia that he had kept the correspondence with this woman for years and showed me pictures of her 2 children that I didn't even know about. And I think probably sent her money, right, Mom? Yeah. But, I had no idea. But even, our causes became Dad's causes. And he continued this correspondence with this young woman. And still to this day, he gets Christmas cards from her. So I was just blown away. Again, I think the theme is that, there are a lot of good people, but they kind of tell us they're good, But Dad was very humble about it. I'm serious when I said I didn't know any of those stories that Mom told me that I read today, except for probably one. So he just, he did it because it was the right thing to do, not because there's any reward in it. So I think he will inspire all of us to continue to just look for ways that we can touch other people's lives, even, you know, just because Nick ever would have done it. So thanks, Dad, for always being there.
Well, how about how interesting he made your life, Mom? I was telling Greg the story about one of the many pets that were brought home. Because Mom didn't really care for having animals in the house. She really didn't, even though you never would know that because of how compassionate she was towards them, but she really never really enjoyed that. One time he brought us home a duck.
Yep.
And Mom was at work, so he brings home this duck, and we promptly named it Disco Duck. There was a song, for those of you who are too young to know, there was a song named Disco Duck at the time. And so we thought, how are we going to get this by Mom? But like, how are we going to do this? So we took the duck upstairs. And Mom came home from work, and we're sitting at the dinner table, as nice as can be. Dad's at one end. He's sitting over here. You can see it. All of a sudden, and Mom's like, what's that? Oh, nothing. Can you pass the corn, Donna? Please, pass the corn. And all throughout the meal, there's this. What is that? So finally, Dad had to bring the duck down, and the jig was up. And so we kept the duck for a little while, but of course, Dad found it a home on a farm because we could not keep the duck. But that was just one of many of Dad's, many of the.
Saint Bernard.
Mom's life was a lot more adventurous because Dad was in it.
Well, I want to tell 2 stories about how Mom has touched many lives. And this is based on my teaching. And I would say first, I was doing a parent-teacher conference for an Indian family, and they, especially the ones that have come to the United States, are very ambitious for their children. And this was a 4-year-old whose father told me that he was worried about, he had moved his son from a different preschool to our preschool, and he was worried that his son was having too much fun in my class. And Dad, in my head, said, "What the hell are you talking about? He's 4. Luckily, Mom stepped in my head and said, help me understand what that means. Just in time, Mom stepped in. So I ended up having a wonderful relationship with this family and this young boy, and helped them understand that as a 4-year-old, probably the best thing would be for their child to have fun in preschool, considering that he was stressed and sad every day in his 3-year-old preschool experience. And that perhaps that was not a good introduction to school. So thank you, Mom. And the other thing is, I had a parent whose child was, I can't tell you the number of parents that I counseled based on Mom's wonderful guidance. But one parent whose child had a very difficult time leaving their grandparents' house and would throw fits. And I said, I have some experience with this. And I explained that my mother used to wear funny socks to work sometimes. She loved funny socks with weird things on them. And so her solution to this was to give, you were a little young for this, to give Grace and Lily, when they left, they could pick out a pair of her funny socks to put on and wear in the car. But they had to make sure that they kept them to give back to Grandma the next time that they saw her, so that it was in their heads that they were going to see them again. So they would run upstairs and they would rifle through the drawer and pick out their socks and change socks and put them on and got taken out to the car. But Grandma would be there saying, now you take care of my socks because I want them back. So in their heads. So I told this parent that, and she came back to me and said, work like a charm.
I think I still have some of those songs.
I don't think we returned any of those.
She's like, I knew my socks was in there.
For our place. So you've touched a lot of strangers' lives, Mom, and all of the children that I have taught.
So I want to say one more thing, that, I want to speak on Paul's behalf, because he loved that.
Yeah.
And, I kind of thinking about they're in heaven together now.
Yep.
It's kind of the way.
They're building something, I bet.
And Dad is saying it's fine the way it is.
Nail on the board, Paul. Nail on the board.
But I just want very dysfunctional. And when we got married, and you know, Dad accepted him pretty readily, I think, and he found kind of like a brother. He didn't have a brother, and I think he kind of thought of Paul as like his brother.
Hmm.
And every time for holidays, I would always say, because Paul had a brother, and you know, they weren't that close, but I'd say, do you want to go visit? He goes, why would I want to visit there? He said, when I'm with your family, this is the kind of a family that I want to be part of.
Mm-hmm.
And he said, always growing up, he said, I always wanted to be friends with people who had the kind of families that I wanted to have.
Hmm.
And he said, so I think that that's what drew him to Dad, was that Dad, he respected Dad so much because he said he made the kind of family that I would always want to be part of.
Hmm.
And he loved being part of that.
Hmm.
And so for most holidays, Mitch, right, we always came here because
Thank God.
I just loved being part of all of it, and you know, as Dad got sicker over the summer, and you know, sicker and sicker, it was pretty clear, you know, kind of where this was headed. And one thing that, because I was here for a lot of it, and one thing that always just made me feel better was I thought, well, he's just going to be with Paul, and they'll be okay. You know, I did think about that a lot.
Mm-hmm.
So. Anyway, and the other thing I want to say too, Mom, because we're going to celebrate your birthday here in a little bit, is every day that I was taking care of Dad, he would say, keep me alive till Mom comes home.
Yeah.
Every day.
Yeah.
Because he couldn't imagine, like, not seeing her home with him again. And I sort of think that God kept him alive long enough so Mom could be better, get well enough to take care of him.
Yep.
So that's what I think happened, is that, because I was shocked that he was still alive after what we went through, and
Yep.
I just kept thinking it must be because he needed Bob to get better. That's just what I think is what happened.
I wanna hear about Rat.
That was Joey.
That was Joey's. Yep.
Oh my gosh, yeah, I had some sketchy friends. Well, actually turned out to be very nice, normal people, but I hung out with a group of guys because, you know, I had girlfriends, so I didn't need any other girlfriends. So I was always friends with the guys, just the way it was. And I had a couple friends, and the one, his name was Mark. I never knew that for probably 2 years after knowing him, but his nickname was Rat, and this was before cell phones and everything, and he called the house one day, and Dad answered, asked for Joey, and no, she's not here. He said, oh, tell her Rat called.
No, but it wasn't just that he said it's Joey there. He said, hey, this is Rat. Joe there. This is Joe. This is Rat. This is Joe there. And he said, excuse me? Who's this and why are you calling my daughter? So then, you know, he just kind of hung up. I did say something to him about, my daughter doesn't know anybody like Rat. I'm not going out with anybody named Rat, so don't call again.
Sounds about right. Well, Donna, and on your, to piggyback on your Rick Springfield story, it's pretty telling that, you know, when I turned 21, of course, you know, did way more drinking before that fact than after that fact. But when I was 21, my 21st birthday, I went out with Dad for a beer.
Did you?
Yeah. Not friends, not party, not. I went out with Dad to Rook's in Ambridge, and we had a beer at the bar. We brought a cake for you to celebrate your birthday.
We thought we would end on a happier
Transition and
note.
end on a happy note.
Well, let me just tell one little.
Yeah, is there anything you wanted to say, Mom?
Yeah, you should be able to talk to.
Well, one of the things that I'll never forget about Dad is the fact that whenever you guys came to him with an idea, or I came to him with an idea, the first response was usually, "You're not?"
Apple did not fall far from the tree.
Or, "We're not." 3 conversations, and pretty soon he'd say, you know, that's probably a pretty good idea. And all of a sudden it was his idea. But he was so, you guys know this, and some of you have said it, but just the pride that he had, because he really came from nothing. I mean, he had no bathroom, no running water, except for a pump in the kitchen in the house that he lived in. And somehow he rose above all that and knew that he wanted to have a better life for himself. And when we started dating, and he would come to visit, and I came from a big family, but it was also a fairly dysfunctional family. My mother was the rock, though. She was the normal one of the group. I always grew up feeling like I didn't belong in this family somehow. I made it into the wrong house. But, he somehow saw the beauty in a family that sat around the dinner table together, even though, they fought about what they were eating or thought about something else. But he just said, this is what I want in my life. I want a family. I want to grow up or marry somebody like this that has, values family and has meals together and has, just something that I never had. So, but he was so proud. And then when we had the family, lots of challenges, of course, when you have no money and lots of kids. But somehow he just kept working, and trying to instill in you all the concept that if you work hard and we're blessed that you all had great abilities, but just to be able to take advantage of the talents that God gave you and work hard and put your talent and the work together, and it had to have a good outcome. So goal setting. Remember how I used to make you guys sit and listen to recordings of sales motivation?
And Jelly and I got out of that because by then he had given up.
And take notes.
No, but we started to do the book reports.
Well,
Book reports.
Book reports.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But as crazy as it was his way of trying his best to motivate you to do your best and to achieve the goals that he couldn't even dream of for himself. So, it even was important to me as I went to work and, found some success in work. And he was so proud of me too, and that meant a lot to me. But anyway, and then of course when we had sons-in-law and grandchildren to be proud of, the bigger and bigger and bigger it got, it was just wonderful. But every idea started with a, "You're not." Pretty soon we'd say, "Okay, we can do that." We can do that. Thank you for all of your shared stories and your thoughts, and I'm sure you'll think of a dozen more as you put your head on the pillow tonight. But just know that we're all so loved, even though sometimes it didn't feel like it when he had a stern word or a cranky time. But he closed his eyes knowing how blessed he was. So thank you all for all that you've done for us, especially over the last couple of years. We wouldn't have made it